Light. Hi, YouTube. How are you? I hope everybody's well. We're doing that thing where I have to do the live before I actually do the show because we've got multiple guests on the show today. And the show, for those of you who are joining me for the first time, is the Lurie Daniel Favors Show on SiriusXM's Urban View, channel 126, where talk empowers and becomes action. We have a jam-packed show this morning, so I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to get to all the news that I want to share with my YouTube folks who I allowed a little opportunity to peek on in when we're doing our live. Because mainly this is an extra, right? Like the YouTube situation has been this wonderful space that we have now created, and I'm grateful for all of you. But I know that you also now have come to look to this space as a place to get your news. So I want to make sure that you get that. Don't forget, everything I don't get a chance to cover this morning, you will get a chance to hear in Lurie Breaks It Down, which is the podcast that accompanies my SiriusXM show, mainly because we recognize not everybody got serious, so we trying to get the news to everybody. As you can see from today, we have a lot to get into. It's big Karen energy, and I always have to apologize to all the black women I know whose names are Karen, because I know way more black Karens than I do white Karens, and like my auntie Karen, Karen Hunter, of course, and like 11 Karens in my life who are black women. I still don't understand how Karen was the name that we settled on. I don't think that was something we did. I don't know. But the point is, big Karen energy coming out of Marjorie Taylor Greene. And it really didn't have to be this way. We're going to talk a little bit about the coming the American economic disaster that is en route. But I want to start with a little story. So this weekend, I was at the supermarket. Me and Brian, my husband, were out grocery shopping because we were trying to make sure we got, the big items that we needed for Thanksgiving. We didn't necessarily need to get all the Thanksgiving items. And yes, I do call it Thanksgiving alternatively with Thanksgiving because, do you know the story of Thanksgiving? Anyway, so Thanksgiving energy, we're out going shopping. And, it's a lot of people. It's mad people. And I needed some eggs. And so I go to eggs because we had run out of the eggs that we just got from Costco a couple weeks ago because my family has been crushing the eggs lately. So I go to the egg section, and there's this brother, who is stacking eggs into the refrigerated section. Now, in front of me, and before I could get to the eggs, was a white man, a grocery cart, and the young man that the white man apparently was with. I didn't know they were necessarily together, but apparently they were. And the white man has asked the brother who was stacking eggs from the cart into the refrigerator section, can he pass him one of the things of eggs? Because obviously the brother had a system going on. We couldn't really see into the box. So it was really inappropriate to just be reaching into the box when all the eggs that we needed were actually there. The brother who's stacking the eggs turns around because he's now going to hand this white man a carton of eggs, which the white man requested, and which we're both, because I was going to then make my request as well. The white man was not willing to wait. I don't know if he was in a rush. I don't know if he had a turkey on fire. I don't know if he was rushing to the seasonings out. We know he wasn't rushing to the seasonings out, but he's basically in a rush. And so as the brother is turning to the refrigerated section to pull out a carton of eggs for him, the white man's like, and like reaches into the crate of eggs that the brother was stacking from and tries to pull out his own section of eggs. Now, because he didn't know like the size of what was inside the box, it was kind of hard to see inside. He is about my height, so he wasn't the tallest of white men. He basically ends up dropping a whole bunch of eggs on the floor, cracking the eggs and making a whole big mess. And the brother is looking at him like, dog, I was just handing you like a whole ass carton of eggs that you asked for. Like, the fuck are you doing? Now, mind you, the brother didn't say any of this because the brother's at work, and I'm sure he's not at work because he wants to be stacking eggs. He's at work because he needs the money, right? Like most of us go to work because we need the money. So the brother's not saying anything, but I'm reading his energy. And his energy was like, this motherfucker right here. And I'm like, thinking the same thing, like you just cracked like 12 eggs on the ground. And so the young man that the white guy was with decides to pick up an egg or two, but he picks up an egg or two and puts it back on the flat surface of the stand that the cart box was standing on. And because they're eggs, they just rolled off and plop and landed on the floor. So like it did nothing, even his effort to fix it up. And so then the brother leaves to go grab paper towel, I guess, to come clean up the mess. Now, I'm still waiting because I need my eggs. And I'm watching this whole thing happen. The white guy, obviously now flustered, is like, oh my gosh, oh my goodness. And so he's flustered, not because he's apologetic, but because I think he was embarrassed because he never really apologized. And then as the brother is turning to go get paper towel, the white guy just looks at the younger white guy and is like, things happen. And then they just walk off. And I'm like, you didn't apologize. You didn't try to offer to help clean it up, even though I know you probably would have made a bigger mess because you do not look like the type of person that actually cleans up messes that you're responsible for. But I was like, my God, this is such Karen type energy. Karen in the way that we use the phrase Karen now, not in the way that all the black women who I know whose name is Karen who are being wrongfully maligned every time we use that phraseology. But it was just very big Karen energy. Like you create a mess and you by asserting authority that you actually did not have. And as a result of asserting authority in a really foul kind of way over things that you really did not have any power over, you created an even bigger mess and then you just walked away for somebody else to clean it up. This story is about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene decided she was going to quit her job. You guys know that she is the congressional representative from the 14th district of the 14th congressional district out of the state of Georgia. And she decided to quit her job after she ran in one office. She's in the middle of her term. She basically ran in a race where she was competing against people who basically had a real vision for improving people's lives and the lives of her constituents by voting for policies that would have done things like extended health care, that would have made sure that as many protections as possible were going to be put in place to prevent people in her district who are not the richest of people from being harmed by the policies of this administration. She voted yes on the big bitch ass bill, which means that she voted to end people's ability to get SNAP. She voted to destroy the social safety net that her constituents rely upon. She voted to get rid of health care subsidies that people are now realizing are going to ensure that their health care premiums are unaffordable, which means they're not going to have health care insurance. She voted no on the Inflation Reduction Act and then bragged about the fact that the Inflation Reduction Act had passed. And you all may recall the Inflation Reduction Act was the piece of legislation that Joe Biden and the Democrats passed. It was a phenomenal piece of legislation that was basically injecting billions of dollars into the American economy through infrastructure development. They were creating roads, repairing roads and repairing bridges and laying down broadband so that people in rural communities would have access to internet and all sorts of things. It was a phenomenal piece of legislation. Marjorie Taylor Greene, and all the Republicans voted against it. And it was kind of funny because even Joe Biden trolled her and was like, since I've taken office, he said, this is back when she had voted against it. I think this was in 2022. And he says, since I've taken office, we've seen over 60 domestic manufacturing announcements all across the solar supply chain. This is Joe Biden talking. One of the biggest is in Dalton, Georgia. You may find it hard to believe, but that's Marjorie Taylor Greene's district. Biden then smiles and adds, I'll be there for the groundbreaking. Now, this was kind of a joke that Biden was playing on Marjorie Taylor Greene because Marjorie Taylor Greene had voted against it, had spoken out against it, but she, like many Republicans, were very excited to take advantage of the money that the Inflation Reduction Act was injecting into their communities. So she's full of shit, basically. And she decided to resign after she had like a week-long, maybe a 2-week-long spat with Donald Trump. And as many people have noted on the interwebs, she has been someone who has been reviled and utterly despised by members of the left for years. She gets in a tat. I shouldn't say a tit-a-tat. She gets into a tit-for-tat. That's what I was looking for. She gets into a tit-for-tat with Donald Trump for 2 weeks. The right wing loses their mind, and she's now got to hire security. She never had to hire security when the left was upset at her, but she now has to hire security after 2 weeks of the right wing being mad at her. She's also conveniently timed her resignation to kick in a day or two after her lifetime congressional pension and lifetime congressional health care plans kick in. So they fully vest the day before she's going to resign, which means even though she voted for no one in her constituency group to actually keep their health care, she's going to have some of the best health care on the planet. Well, the best health care insurance on the planet. That, America having the best health care on the planet, I think, is largely debatable and, frankly, easily disproven. But basically, she decides to quit. Instead of standing on business and taking responsibility for all of the harm that she helped to create. She helped to create the monster where now she's worried about the health care of her constituents. Where were those worries when she was actually in a position to actually vote in a way that would have preserved health care? Now that we're supposed to believe that you care about women's rights because you stood up for the Epstein victims, you didn't care about women's rights when it came to voting for abortion bans. You didn't care about women's rights when it came to advancing reproductive justice. You didn't care about women's rights when it came to pushing back on the white Christian nationalists who are a part of your party who have said that women do not deserve the right to vote and they want to repeal the 19th Amendment. She has repeatedly voted in ways that would limit and restrict the rights. She has left a path of devastation in her wake. And quite frankly, when you look at the policies that she has advanced, in addition to spreading a whole host of weird QAnon theories, like that Jewish space lasers were responsible for wildfires, she is like a QAnon's QAnon. Like, she's going to leave all that mess. And instead of standing on business and staying in Congress, you done did this whole I apologize, mea culpa tour, but you're not going to stay in your position long enough to actually vote in a way that would undo some of the mess that you caused. Big Karen energy. You assert authority that you're not qualified to have. You destroy people's lives. You make a whole ass mess, and then you just leave. Of all the whiteness woman culture things to do, you just leave. It's absolutely disgusting, but it is very much on brand. And quite frankly, Jasmine Crockett had some things to say about this when she was talking about the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene is a whole ass mess, and that Marjorie Taylor Greene should be staying in Congress to help fight for the things that she is now recognizing that she was a stumbling block against. Now, for time's sake, I don't have time to play the clip for Jasmine Crockett, but you guys are going to hear that in the podcast episode later on today. Lurie breaks it down, where we are going to talk about this a bit more extensively, because the reality is that we are in a situation right now where a lot of people are recognizing that they have done some very wrong things, either with their votes or the legislation that they have promulgated in advance, but they're leaving without having to fix any of it. And there's a lot of fixing to do. Tyson, one of the largest, biggest beef processing plants in the nation, is going to now be closed. It is owned by Tyson Corporation, and they are the largest meat supplier. And they have lost more than $425 million worth of beef this year, despite the fact that there are record beef prices. Now, this is due to a whole host of things, as noted in this article by the Wall Street Journal, where they talk about the fact that climate change has really devastated the beef, I don't want to call it the beef markets, but the number of cattle available. They have been perishing, dying in the fields because of the droughts that people have experienced. There is not a lot of food, or not enough food, to provide for the animals. And so in addition to the fact that many farmers have basically culled their herds over the past several years, beef prices are exorbitantly high, but this beef manufacturing plant now has to close. Tyson, which again is America's largest meat supplier, they are planning to close one of the largest beef processing plants in Nebraska. In Nebraska, even though we're in a time where I said we are now in a cattle shortage in the United States, and that shortage is squeezing meatpacking companies. This plant, which was in Lexington, Nebraska, employs roughly 3,000 people. They slaughter about 5,000 cattle a day. Now, Tyson is, according to the Wall Street Journal, the first of the big four meatpacking companies that processes 85% of beef in the United States. They're the first one to close a major plant during what they are calling the current cattle supply crunch. Now, interestingly enough, Nebraska is a very Republican state. Nebraska voted very Republican-like and has two Republican senators and Republican representatives for the most part throughout the state. It's feeling like Republican policies don't really work. It's feeling like they're a crock of shit and they don't work at all. According to the reports, Tyson said earlier this month that their cattle costs for the 2025 fiscal year rose by nearly $2 billion in September compared with the prior year. So remember how people were talking about Bidenomics and how Bidenomics was so terrible? It looks as though Bidenomics were far better than Trumponomics. Trumponomics equal recession. The plant closure, according to the report, follows weeks of pressure from the Trump administration to the entire meat industry to find a way to lower beef prices. Remember, they were also talking about investing in Argentinian beef, even though Argentinian beef has screwworm parasites, which Americans were very concerned about because we have done a lot of work to eradicate parasites here, even though RFK Jr. is doing everything he can to bring back all sorts of diseases that we had eradicated with vaccines. The screwworm parasite is something that was very much concerning to American cattle farmers. They were also very pissed off that Donald Trump, in addition to giving this $40 billion package to Argentina, was also talking about investing and buying Argentine beef. And American cattle farmers were like, why you ain't gonna buy our beef? Where's our beef? Why you ain't buying the beef? And basically is a combination of efforts that really were triggered in during the pandemic, when people were raising a lot of cattle during the pandemic years. Again, there were severe drought conditions. There was a lot of grazing land that ended up burning and a lot of rising costs. Basically, the how should I say, the perfect storm, if you will, for the cattle industry has been set for quite some time. And the tariffs and the plans that this administration has implemented just took it to the next level. Now, this is also Lexington, Nebraska's largest employer, and it's going to have a devastating impact on all of those Republican voters who voted for the American way. All the voters who voted for the Donald Trump policies are starting to realize Donald Trump's policies suck. And it didn't have to be this way. According to Fortune magazine, top economists are now warning that affordability costs are going to continue to be an issue because of tariffs and immigration. The two cornerstones of the Trump administration are now being rightfully identified as the biggest contributors to the inflation and to the economic distress that Americans are experiencing: the immigration crackdown and the tariffs. According to Moody's Analytics chief economist Mark Zandi, he has been lamenting what could have been, quote, if President Donald Trump hadn't waged war on trade and immigration. In a social media post, the Wall Street Journal notes that this economist, Mark Zandi, noted that, quote, prices have surged since the pandemic and are continuing to climb at an uncomfortably quick pace. Consumer price inflation is near 3%, well above the Fed's inflation target, and everything points to an even higher inflation debt ahead. And he says it didn't have to be this way. But y'all couldn't vote for the black lady because you was mad because she cackled too loud and she had Indian heritage. I don't know. Argue with somebody else. And I know what's going to happen right now. one of you who are going to watch this video, you're going to watch this video and you're going to type something in my comment section. I'd say something like, all Kamala Harris had to do was to disavow the Gaza situation. All she had to do was disavow what was happening. And again, I would just remind you, all voters had to do was to see the forest for the trees, because the reality is right now, and the reality was then, the vice president does not set policy. The vice president does not typically go against the president when it comes to international policy. And quite frankly, had voters been thinking through their decisions, they would realize that right now Gaza is fucked. Like beyond repair. Fuck so bad beyond repair. Americans ain't even thinking about it right now. So not that Americans were thinking about it much before anyway, before this issue became an AstroTurf issue that was designed to throw elections. Where's the uncommitted folks? Where they at? Like, where's the votes? I know that people were mad at Kamala Harris because she would not do the thing that vice presidents never do, which is to break with the president. But let us be crystal clear. Gaza is screwed over. We done lost voting rights. We done lost civil rights. We done lost education rights. We done lost the whole ass Department of Education. We done lost food stamps. We done lost health care. All of this because voters could not see the forest for the trees. So miss me with the all she had to do was, all we had to do was not be stupid with our votes. I'm just saying. I know I just stepped on some toes. Y'all will be all right. I promise you. But basically, not only is the entire nation grappling with high inflation, a job market that is struggling to create jobs, and eventually, I thought it was going to be today. It's not going to be today. But eventually, we're going to have a real conversation about AI, because I know everybody's blaming all these job losses on AI. I don't think the job losses are based on AI, because AI ain't producing no results. 95% of the companies that have tried AI in some way, shape, or form, and we talked about this before, 95% of them have found no improvement to their bottom line as a result of AI. And in fact, it is actually taxing the labor force, because when you put something into AI and you get it, you spend as much time correcting AI as you would have had you just put a little thought together and put out your own content. So I don't believe it's about AI. I really do believe that this is an effort to reset the norms of the job market, but we'll have to talk about that another day. But what we are also going to talk about is the fact that artificial intelligence is not the genie in the bottle, and I think the collapse is coming. But we'll talk about that later. The reason I'm mentioning this now is because in addition to all the struggles with the job market, the fact that we have way more people unemployed now than we did at this time last year, we also have this particular issue with Black women. And we're also seeing that again in Fortune magazine, that according to the latest analysis, roughly 600,000 Black women have been economically sidelined. That's a direct quote out of an article that you should know the title of, and it's called "The Exit Economy is Here. Black Women Are Paying the Highest Price" by Katisha Roy. Katisha Roy talks about the fact that, I know we've been shouting around this 300,000 Black women have been unemployed. I've been saying it's way closer to over 500,000, and she has crunched the numbers, and it is. 600,000 Black women have been economically sidelined, according to reporter Roy. The November 20th, 2025 jobs report makes clear that this isn't a blip, it is a structural process. The economy only added 119,000 payroll jobs in September. Revisions to August and July erased another 33,000 positions. Basically, the American economy is in the tank, and Black women, unfortunately, we are leading the way, and we are being sidelined, she says, at scale. Since February, she goes through all of the numbers. She breaks it down, not just in terms of how many have lost jobs, how many remain unemployed, and how many have been pushed out of the labor force entirely. And when we think about the fact that the same numbers of Black women who have been pushed out have been replaced by white men, then we know this really is just Project 2025 actually making its way to the forefront. She says that the only meaningful job gains for Black women came in industries where, frankly, wages are being depressed. That's healthcare, food services, and social assistance. That's the sector where Black women are concentrated, she says, and they are also among the lowest paying sectors in the entire economy, which is why we're not buying it. We're not buying it. We're not buying it. We're not buying it. And by buying it, I mean we're not buying this whole idea that we are supposed to show up and we're supposed to make as much opportunity or take as much opportunity as we can to invest in the economy. We're not doing that. I want you all to take a listen to this video clip. This is LaTosha Brown on CNN. Is she on CNN or MSNBC? Is it CNN? I think she's on CNN. She's on CNN. I want you all to take a listen to this clip. Amina, I had to just refresh my page. Let's take a listen to what she has to say about the "We're Not Buying It" campaign. And I'm just going to tell you 1,000%, I'm 100% down with this. Take a listen.
This isn't a boycott. This is a consumer action. What we're saying is three things. One, we are reclaiming our power as consumers, that we will make more conscious choices. That part of the reason why we're working with 100 aligned organizations and millions of people, because we want, as consumers, we have a responsibility to be much more conscientious of how we spend our money.
That's right.
The second thing is really around redirecting our resources, that we're asking people to not spend with these large retailers, but we also also are encouraging them to spend with small and local and Black-owned businesses, many of them that have taken a hit in this economy. And then the third thing is really around resistance, that we're sending a message loud and clear that those companies that align with policies that hurt and harm us, that we are resistant. We will not support them. And so it's not just about how the bottom line of these companies in a boycott. It's also about the consumers' reactions. It's also about us really building a muscle that as consumers we're saying and taking our power, and that we have to be more conscious around our spending choices.
We ain't buying it. If it ain't Black owned, Black created, Black produced, Black sourced, we're not buying it. Now, I know she said small businesses as well. I'm willing to throw a bone to the small businesses, but mainly Black. Mainly Black. And that's because, frankly, small businesses, a lot of them are run by people who voted against us. If it's not Black, you got to, and I know what's going to happen. As soon as some of y'all hear this, not y'all, but y'all's cousins, as soon as some of y'all cousins hear me say this, one of the things you're going to say, or they're going to put in my comment section is, well, you know, I tried to buy from a Black business, but I didn't like the service, and they was rude, and they didn't. And to which I say, okay, but you was just shopping at Target, and Target was perfectly willing to throw Black people off the bus. Like, they were completely, like, we've been shopping at Home Depot, and Home Depot is engaging in some whole-ass slave-ass practices and tendencies. I actually had to buy some new appliances, and we were going to go to Home Depot, and I was like, wait a minute, Home Depot is cooperating with ICE. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So let's not act as though having a bad shopping experience, to the extent you have had one with a Black-owned business, and quite frankly, most of my shopping experiences with Black-owned businesses have been wonderful. I know that there has been a time or two where I have been like, ooh, do you even want customers? Like, I get it that can happen, but most of my shopping experiences are wholly wonderful with Black-owned businesses because Black-owned businesses are appreciative of my patronage. Now, you might be carrying some energy into this experience with Black-owned businesses. And yes, there are Black-owned businesses that need to do better, of course. But my suggestion would be, pull the owner aside and say, hey, man, you're failing in this way and the other. Or, hey, man, I came here to spend some money. Your personnel, your staffers, is this, that, and the other. Explain it to them. Have a conversation. Work it out. Because what we need is way more Black-owned businesses. Way more Black-owned businesses that are going to require us to actually do the work of spending our money in Black-owned businesses and making sure that we are doing what we can to build up our own economy. I want to move on into what has happened over the weekend, or should I say happened on Friday. This was curious to me because Donald Trump has spent months calling Zohran Mamdani, the New York City mayor-elect, a jihadist, an economist, a communist, and then like Elise Stefanik, who has launched her gubernatorial campaign in the state of New York, has called Zohran Mamdani a jihadist, and then Donald Trump decided that him and Zohran was going to meet. Actually, it wasn't that him and Zohran decided. Zohran Mamdani's team reached out to Donald Trump, as Zohran said he was going to do. And a lot of people were like, well, why is he meeting with Donald Trump? He shouldn't be meeting with Donald Trump. Given often the same energy that a lot of people gave Muriel Bowser, that a lot of people gave Big Gretch when Big Gretch went to go meet with Donald Trump, when Muriel Bowser kind of capitulated. And the difference between a mayor, Muriel Bowser, who's the mayor of D.C., and a mayor, Zohran Mamdani, and I have to say this before we even show you the clip, the part of the huge difference there is that Mayor Muriel Bowser does not have a governor that she can go to. Mayor Muriel Bowser's governor is basically Congress. So she does not have the same level of power. She does not have the same level of authority. And so when she essentially folded on many things, that's basically what happens when you ain't got no power. That's why fighting for D.C. statehood was such an important thing, even though a lot of people act like it was not that big of a deal. But why did the New York City mayor-elect, his team reaches out to Donald Trump, and everyone's painting this as the socialist versus the capitalist? And I just want to remind everybody, can we talk really quickly about the definitions between socialism, capitalism, and communism? Capitalism is the notion that individuals and private businesses own everything. They make economic decisions without government regulation. They keep all the profits, and they're supposed to accept all the losses without intervention. Now, I say supposed to because every time major systems like artificial intelligence or the auto industry, every time they get into a condition where they need a bailout, the government be bailing them out. So it'd be capitalism when y'all win it, but it sure as hell be socialism when you lose. Let's talk about socialism. Socialism is where the government owns and regulates some parts of the economy for the benefit of the entire community, and individuals and private businesses can also make their own economic decisions. Communism is where the government owns everything. They regulate everything. And so socialism sort of sits in the middle of that. And if you're concerned about what socialism looks like, well, just think about public school, right? Public school is an example of socialism. Libraries are an example of socialism. But everyone was acting like the socialist, democratic mayor-elect coming into D.C. was going to be dreadful, awful, terrible, and no good and very bad. So much so that the Republicans got a lot of Democrats to vote with them to condemn socialism. Now, I don't know why they don't ever have a vote on a resolution to condemn fascism, and I don't have time to play the clips right now. We'll play that. You'll get a chance to hear more of this commentary in the podcast later on today. But they decided that they were going to vote on a resolution, Congress, including my congressional representative, Hakeem Jeffries, decided that they were going to vote to condemn socialism. And then Zohran Mamdani gets to the White House. Him and Donald Trump, I don't know what happened, but basically Donald Trump is like glazing your mans, and in a way that like essentially was so embarrassing that MAGA had a fit about it, because Donald Trump in some pictures is looking up at Zohran like, will you be my friend? Like, it was so weird. I want you all to take a listen to this clip. This is Abby Phillip clip. This is the one shared by Adam Mockler. I want you all to take a listen to this clip where basically Zohran, they're discussing what happened here, but what happened here was significant because Donald Trump went into this meeting all bluster and bombastic nature and then came out like a little puppy in Zohran's hands. Take a listen.
You saw Donald Trump essentially undermining the MAGA media ecosystem in real time. For the past few months, they've called Zohran Mamdani a jihadist, communist, a threat to America who's incompatible with the governing style of America. You think he's incompatible with the governing style of America?
His values
Trump
are fundamental. Trump is wrong on this case.
You think Trump is wrong on this case?
Zohran Mamdani's principles are fundamentally hostile to the founding principles. His idea that we should confiscate property.
He's never said anything about confiscation.
He says he wants to take
I
luxury
moderated
condos.
two debates that have interviewed him half a dozen times.
Then you would know that he said that.
There's no confiscation.
Hey, this is a perfect example. The MAGA media ecosystem has made Zohran seem like this extreme jihadist. And listen, some of his ideas
the legislation he supports in the council will force property owners before they can sell it on the public market to sell it.
Why didn't Trump confront him about that? Why didn't Trump confront him about it? Why was Trump?
He said it was his honor.
Maybe he did.
But you know what Trump said? Trump said that we both agree on increasing the supply of housing, and that's going to.
That's what we call you got played. They got played, and here she goes. Well, Trump's wrong about that. I don't think Trump's wrong about that. I think you played yourself, because Elise Stefanik has, again, and she's launched her gubernatorial campaign for the state of New York, talking about how much of a jihadist Zohran Mamdani is. At one point, a reporter asked Donald Trump in front of Zohran Mamdani, do you still think he's a jihadist? And Donald Trump is like, no, I don't think that at all. I don't think that at all. Then they asked Zohran Mamdani, you have said before that you believe that Donald Trump is a despot, and you believe that he is somebody who is bad for the nation, and that he is a fascist. And Zohran's like, everything I done said, I say it because I believe it, and I still believe it to this day. So you got Zohran standing on business. You got Donald Trump glazing your mans. You got MAGA like in an uproar, not quite knowing how to deal with it. But I just want to be crystal clear that we already have socialism in America. When the bailout happened for the auto industry during the 2008, 9, and 10 foreclosure crisis, that was socialism. When we have medical services that we provide for our military and they all have universal health care, even though we don't have it, that is socialism. Your ability to go to the library, that is socialism. Do we have time to play the Nikki Free video? Amina? We don't have time. Damn it. All right. So there's another video clip that I wanted to play for you all, but it's by the system named I Am Nikki Free. You will all be able to hear it during the podcast episode later on today. But basically, Nikki Free is explaining to the people, like, Democrats, by signing on with the Republicans to condemn socialism, just before Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic Socialist mayoral-elect, I almost called him a mayoral-elect candidate, the Democratic Socialist mayor-elect of New York City, before he gets to meet with Donald Trump, you played yourself and you look stupid because you're basically making an argument against socialism, even though socialism is the phrase we would use to describe all of the safety net programs that the Democrats have been fighting to keep. Make it make sense. Stop being afraid that people don't know things. Explain things to people and they will understand the things that you are afraid to explain. We got to go now because we're getting ready to go live on our show. Just want to make sure you guys had up-to-date news in terms of what was happening. We'll cover more of this in the podcast episode, and I'll go more in depth later on today for those of you who would prefer that mode of content intake. But just want to make sure that I did not leave y'all feeling abandoned, because it's a lot of news, and we want to make sure that we get as much of it in as possible. All right, got to go. Urban View, I will see y'all in just a few seconds here live on Urban View, channel 126. We're talking power.